Chapter 10. The Truth We Deny. I said, in a weird way, it's kind of like I can build my own family now, one I want to grow strong enough to protect. Lin Yu looked like she didn't know what to say. Before she could gather her thoughts, we were both surprised by the sound of shattering glass. The sky of the illusory realm we inhabited cracked like a window before shattering entirely and raining unyielding light down upon us. My senses were completely overwhelmed, but I snapped back to reality when the smell of smoke assaulted my nostrils. I opened my eyes and realized I was laying in the courtyard, my body on top of Lin Yu's. I started pushing myself off her and up to my feet, but I was interrupted when she smacked me hard across the face, knocking me over. "Don't get fresh with me just because we—" "What happened to you?" she asked, seeming to immediately forget her anger. I pushed myself out of the dirt and rubbed my throbbing cheek as I looked to her. "Happened to me? What are you talking about?" I replied. I was surprised when she drew her black blade and approached. I was on guard, but she knelt down in front of me, showing me my own reflection. There in her blade, I saw glowing red eyes staring back at me, not my normal light blue. "Red? Well, I'll be damned," I said, looking to my hands and finding them surrounded by a thin, bright red aura. Before either of us could say anything else, we were taken aback by the concussive force of a huge explosion in the Mingsong Palace. It literally pushed me to my feet, shoving Lin Yu and I back about a meter through the dirt. When the force of the blast subsided, she immediately called out her brother's name and started charging toward the site of the explosion, leaping on top of the burning palace before jumping out of sight. "Can't I catch my breath for a damn second?" I asked myself, following after her. I landed on the roof of the palace to find nearly half of it blown to bits by a fiery explosion, covering the building and landscape in burning wreckage. There in the center of the inferno stood Towdy, completely unfazed by the flames as it ripped apart those who perished in the blast, devouring their souls without prejudice. Suddenly I heard a familiar voice crying out for help from inside the building, begging for anyone close by to free him from danger. Lin Yu was engaged with Towdy and Ren didn't seem to be nearby, so I ran to the sound, hoping I might find him. And sure enough, there he was in a cell, locked behind bars. At first I thought Zhao was all right, but as I approached, I saw firsthand the horror the Mingsong family had thrust upon him. Zhao's right eye was missing entirely, leaving only a pink hollow hole where it once rested. The poor guy was terrified, blind, and clutching that black puppy for dear life. "Zhao, it's going to be all right. I've got you," I told him, trying to reassure him. "Damon, please tell me it's really you. Those Mingsongs took my eye," he squealed with terror. I didn't want him to have to wait another second and smash through the bars a couple steps from him before scooping him up and managing to get him out safely. I set him down just outside the graveyard. "You're okay now, Zhao. Just stay here and wait for me. This'll all be over soon," I said, wanting him to hold on to hope. He was still petrified and couldn't reply. I knew I needed to end this quickly, so I turned back toward the building to find General Lai standing there, holding a large crossbow. "You're going to call off that beast, or I'm going to kill you. Right here, right now," Lai commanded. "I didn't call it here. You did," I told him, surprising the old man. "That's Light Eater Towdy. It's here to eat the souls of those who can't cross over into the next life because you idiots were messing with the natural order." Lai's eyes opened wide for a moment, but then he narrowed them again. "You're a filthy liar. Why would such a creature even exist?" he said, wagging his crossbow at me. "Don't believe me if you want to, but I want to seal that thing up as much as you do," I replied. The old man growled at me and fired his crossbow, but he didn't even perceive my speed as I moved behind him. I hesitated a moment, but still decided on what needed to be done. The old man's head moved wildly as he looked about for me. "How did he do that? I was looking right at him." I told him, "You're too slow, old man," before taking a brutal slash at his neck. I found myself flabbergasted when Liu dashed up and blocked the blow with a shield bearing his family crest. However, my attention was taken by him completely when I found his eyes open. Zhao's eye still where his once was, but the frightening part? His mouth had been sewn shut. Just the sight of it made me back off on instinct, my eyes wide and horrified. "Liu, what happened to you?" I asked. He tried to answer me with some muffled huffing I can only describe as disturbing, but of course I couldn't understand him. I swallowed hard before taking my sword in both hands, anger starting to rise in my chest. Lai stepped up beside him, a hateful look in his eyes. "It seems these eyes that see the truth caused my dear son to speak only lies," he said. I bared my teeth, knowing where this would be going next. "So you sewed your own son's mouth shut to keep him from telling everyone the truth about what you were doing." "Disgusting," I replied. "You're an old fool, Lai. Everyone could already see what you were doing was twisted. Liu, you can't really still be defending your father if you see the truth now. Look at what he's done to you. He doesn't care about you. You're a means to an end to him. A simple tool. I was going to say more, but I was taken aback when the muzzled, bulky man charged me. I was holding my blade tight, but I felt something inside me. It was telling me that Liu could still be spared at the least. He might not be a great person, but he was still being misled and tortured into submission, just like Lin Yu. I took a deep breath and sheathed my blade, finding Liu to seem far slower than he had in our previous battles. He approached quickly and raised his glaive, but he couldn't defend himself when I kicked his shield aside and planted my fist in his sternum. Liu's knees buckled and he grasped the spot where I'd struck him before falling to the ground and dropping his weapons. He wasn't out cold, but his wheezing breaths made me think I might have broken some bones. Still, I knelt down and ran my knife along the stitching that held Liu's lips together. It sounded like it caused him great pain, but I started removing the stitches so he could speak. I didn't get many out before I heard Lai reload his crossbow. I looked up just before the old man fired at me and managed to snatch the bolt out of the air with ease. He was taken completely by surprise when I broke off the poison tip and flicked it back at him, saying, "You dropped this." It nailed him right between the eyes and he went down hard, grabbing at his face like a whining child who ran into a table. The old man got up and started heading toward the graveyard, but I didn't have time to worry about that right then and kept pulling out Liu's stitches. When I finished, I asked him, "Liu, you need to tell me the truth your eye showed you. I need to figure out what's going on if I'm going to put a stop to it." Unfortunately, Liu was too dazed to respond. I tried rousing him for a few more moments before getting frustrated and giving up. I was just getting back to my feet when Ren ran up to me from inside the palace. "Damon, I can't find my dad inside anywhere," she said urgently. "He's probably chained inside a jar, like that god of death," I explained. Chained inside a jar? Wait, I swear I saw a few jars like that somewhere, but, she said to herself, trying to jog her memory. She was about to say more, but we were surprised when Liu started pushing himself to his feet beside us. "Right, no death means they have no reason to give up," I said, drawing my blade to defend us. "You interloping son of a bitch," Liu said as he got to his feet, seeming like he was struggling to breathe properly. "He's trying to help you," Ren said, but I held up a hand to tell her to stop. "Let's get this over with," I said, taking an aggressive stance. I could hear the booming sounds of Lin Yu trying to fend off Towdy close by. We were all a bit taken aback when General Lai called out, "Liu, get the jar and bring it here." "But father," Liu replied as he looked back to him, but the old general interrupted him, saying, "Don't you dare tell me that I has shown you a false truth again, boy. Now go and do as you're told." "But which one?" he tried asking again. "Go!" Lai screamed, unreasonable fury ripping at his raspy throat. Liu grumbled to himself and started trying to move around me, but I got in his way. "Tell me the truth your eye showed you," I insisted, since Liu seemed to feel like talking. He gulped and looked quite frustrated, but outside of a glance to his father, he didn't respond. A moment or two passed before Ren broke the silence by stepping up to me and grabbing my arm. "Let him go, Damon," she said, a conflicted look in her eyes. I rolled my eyes and said, "Whatever," in response. Liu eyed me carefully but started going around me again, seeming satisfied when I didn't try to get in his way. I was going to ask Ren why I just let Liu go, but after he headed off, she followed after him. Lai fired another bolt at me, but I dodged with ease before running right up to him, making him gasp and fall back onto the ground. He pushed himself backward through the dirt frantically until he backed right into that white tree close to the headstones. His hand touched that face on the ground and it quietly moaned, seeming to frighten Lai even more. I drew my blade as I stepped up to him and pointed it at the old man's throat. He didn't say anything, so I said, "Tell me the truth, Lai. What's really going on here? You haven't ended death for this false immortality. You aren't that stupid. I see it in your eyes." "I'm not telling you a damn thing, you ingrate," he replied. I knelt down and grabbed a fistful of his robes to pull him closer. "You'd really sacrifice all these people's lives for nothing and expect everyone to just let you get away with it? You will tell me the truth," I shouted, starting to get really pissed off. I heard Zhao not far away say, "The truth?" to himself. "And what will you do if I don't? Kill me?" Lai asked. "Immortality won't do you any good if your body is in pieces," I threatened, but he didn't seem fazed in the least. "Or maybe you'd prefer I let Towdy eat your soul." This time the old man's eyes opened wide and he struggled against me, but he remained mute in his resistance. Just then, Lin Yu was slammed through a nearby wall and sent tumbling into the dirt before she scraped a hand across the ground and regained her footing. She looked pretty banged up and she was out of breath, but when she retook her stance, she did so with such ferocity that she clearly had plenty of fight left in her. Towdy emerged from the damaged wall she'd been thrown through, a wicked grin on his lips. "Lin Yu, help me!" Lai begged, but she flourished her blade and stood firm. "I've got my hands full at the moment," she said, her light growing brighter by the moment. Towdy seemed offended by the shining light of Lin Yu, but I was surprised when I noticed the odd beast seemed to be sniffing the air, its nostrils gently rising and falling as it started looking around for the source of the scent. In an instant, Towdy sank back into the darkness. Lai looked about for him in horror, but Lin Yu turned back and looked beyond Lai and I. I trailed her eyes and saw Towdy, looming tall right beside us in the darkness. I immediately made distance and took up a defensive stance, not sure what the creature was up to. Lai watched me go before looking over where Lin Yu and I were staring, to then jump up and scramble away in terror, hiding behind his own daughter. Zhao carefully stepped closer to me, and he was doing something with his eye patch, but I was too focused on Towdy to see what right then. I guided him with a push and said, "Stay behind me." Towdy was sniffing the ground near the white tree and looked up when Liu arrived with Ren not far behind. She looked like she'd gotten the hell kicked out of her, but she was dragging herself after Liu just the same. Liu set down the 4 jars and immediately looked to his father, shouting, "Which jar did you need, father?" Lai jumped with surprise, seeming he hadn't even noticed his son's arrival. Lai pointed to the largest one and Liu picked it back up, but hesitated as Ren approached and made ready to open the other jars. Lai pointed from one jar to the tree and said, "Bring it to the..." before he stopped cold. When he stopped, I noticed a quiet laughter. It was raspy, unhinged and slow, but I noticed that no one here was laughing. I looked back to Towdy to find him reaching his head down toward the ground, and that was where I found the source of the sound. The woman's face etched into the dirt. She was the one laughing. Towdy reached down and took a cautious bite of the dirt, and the woman's laugh grew louder, more maniacal, and even more threatening than before. Suddenly, the entire tree moved as fluidly as a hand and latched onto Towdy, a bright purple light outshining Lin Yu as it overpowered him and forced the beast to his knees. I was horrified to see the woman's mouth and Towdy move in unison, as 1,000 voices said, "The jar," through them. Liu was frozen holding the jar, as the bright light blinded us all. General Lai started toward his son and said, "What are you waiting for? Do it!" The bulky man fumbled with the keys as his shaky hands tried to stop him, but he overcame his reservations with a grimace and inserted the key into the lock. I gulped hard, not sure what I should do. Liu opened the jar and a scroll immediately flew from it of its own accord before getting snatched by a bending branch of the white tree.